From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
News channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Josh Howard, a packed audience. We've got a fantastic show coming up tonight, starting with a debate. Should burning religious books be illegal? And is this the front line in the survival of Western liberal democracy? Also...
Who's going to do? Going to arrest the preacher? I'm allowed to preach here. The force know I'm allowed to preach here. They always come out.
Also, should you bring your phone and leave it on when recording a TV show? We're going to be spending about 30 minutes on that one. So journalist Tim Samuels joins us live in the studio to discuss his latest documentary about the silencing of young white men. We're going to be joined by two Irish activists who are standing up for gay rights. They've just held the sold-out LGB event in Ireland. It is the first of its kind. There's some of them here. And Andrew Doyle, the GOAT, will join us tonight as he launches a free speech charter for the UK. All that and more, including comedians Leo Kearse and Paul Cox, answering some crazy culture developments from our live studio audience. But first, the news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight. National Guard troops are now on the streets of Los Angeles, setting up outside federal buildings after days of unrest in the city over immigration raids in predominantly Latino neighbourhoods. Donald Trump, the president, has ordered 2,000 troops into the city, saying protests that block immigration enforcement constitute a rebellion. They'll be deployed for 60 days, with the Defence Secretary making the final call on their presence. California's governor, though, has slammed the move as inflammatory, while Democrats say it's authoritarian overreach. But some Republicans insist the troops are there to stop tensions spiralling. Meanwhile, the fallout between the President Donald Trump and Elon Musk is fuelling fears over deep cuts to NASA's science programme. The White House is proposing slashing NASA's budget by nearly a quarter, with critics warning it could be the agency's worst crisis in decades. Trump has threatened to withdraw contracts with SpaceX, which NASA relies on to reach the Moon and Mars. Space experts say vital climate and planetary missions could also be scrapped and warn the space programme is being, they say, repurposed for flags, not science. Back here at home, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says employers should have the right to ban staff from wearing burqas and other face coverings in the workplace. Speaking to the Sunday Telegraph, she said she wouldn't allow veiled visitors into her constituency surgeries and believes staff should dress by choice, not pressure. UK laws allow dress codes but require any restrictions on religious clothing to be proportionate and for a legitimate reason. Her comments are likely to spark fresh debate on religious freedoms and workplace rights. Security concerns are mounting in London over plans for a Chinese embassy. The US is reportedly warning Downing Street the project could, they say, jeopardise intelligence sharing. The development at the former Royal Mint site near Canary Wharf has been called in by the government for review. Technology Secretary Peter Kyle says security issues will be taken care of, but the Shadow Home Secretary warns the site could become a hub for Chinese espionage. More than 60,000 NHS appointments were cancelled during just 5 days last summer, including many for cancer patients. Figures seen exclusively by GB News reveal that 63,000 procedures were scrapped during July strikes, including vital biopsies and X-rays. The Health Secretary Wes Streeting is now urging doctors to reconsider further strike plans, warning the disruption risks delaying life-saving diagnosis. Israel's defence minister has vowed to stop an aid flotilla carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists from reaching Gaza. The vessel, Michelin, operated by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, left Sicily last week. They say they aim to break Israel's naval blockade and deliver humanitarian aid. However, Israel Katz said no boat will be allowed through and called the blockade essential to stop arms from reaching Hamas. It comes as tensions are high after a previous flotilla attempt was struck by drones in international waters. And Sir David Attenborough has urged urgent action to save the world's oceans. He told Prince William, "We must act before we destroy this great treasure."
The thing which I am appalled by when I first saw the shots that were taken for this film are what we have done to the deep ocean floor.
Well, the pair was speaking after a private screening of Ocean, a new documentary narrated by Sir David Attenborough that exposes the damage from overfishing and deep-sea trawling. Prince William, who calls Attenborough his inspiration, will address world leaders at a marine summit and urge urgent, optimistic action. The film supports protecting 30% of marine areas by 2030, a goal that both men say could help the oceans to recover. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for plenty more right here on GB News.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. You know the score. This is a show where we cast our gaze across the spectrum of culture, current affairs and politics, doing our very best to deliver a dollop of common sense to that which has become senseless. We have got a very exciting show ahead this evening, and we're going to get straight into it with a debate about what I'd argue could lead to the end of Western liberal democracy, the reintroduction of blasphemy laws. A man has been found guilty of a religiously aggravated public offence after burning a Quran outside the Turkish consulate in London, in a case that has sparked fierce debate about freedom of expression. Hamid Koskan shouted anti-Islamic slurs as he set the text alight in Knightsbridge in February, and footage showed passers-by confronting and attacking him. The 50-year-old argued it was a protest against President Erdogan and a lawful act of free expression, but the court ruled his actions caused harassment and distress. Joining me now to discuss whether the burning of religious texts should be illegal is the broadcaster and political commentator Fahma Mohammed and campaigns officer at the National Secular Society, Alejandro Sanchez. Welcome to both of you. Lovely to see you. I got those names perfectly right. Alejandro was the one I was very proud of particularly. So welcome. Obviously, you're both familiar with this particular case. Fahma, if we could start with you. Do you understand people's concerns about this conviction?
I do to an extent, but I actually don't understand why people would like to have something which historically is so sinister. When it comes to freedom of expression, I don't know why we're talking about it as being, blasphemy laws. We're not here to say that we cannot have debate and criticism. It happens within all forms of society, religion and not religion. When it comes to protests, when it comes to debate, but on the streets, publicly, and you are targeting a particular group in that sort of sense. Historically, we know in Nazi Germany, that was what was done to the Jewish sort of books. And that is not something that I want my children or anyone else's children growing up to think that that's okay.
OK, well, look, every protest arguably targets someone, but do you agree with that? Do you understand why people are very wary and concerned about this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. But just responding to Fahima's point, this was a political protest outside the Turkish consulate, and it was a protest against Islamism. It was a protest against an idea, and the law should protect people, but it shouldn't protect ideas. And Hamid was motivated by the Islamization of Turkey. His family has faced great suffering in the Armenian genocide at the hands of Islamists, and he was making a peaceful protest against an idea, and he was attacked and assaulted for doing that.
Yeah,
I don't think it's peaceful.
Well, okay, well, you said that you don't understand why people might not like it, but we don't have to like I don't like pro-Palestinian marchers being out there shouting for jihad or shouting for a global intifada.
Yeah, and they have been, convicted for certain things like that.
Well, if it's incitement for hatred, but do you think the burning of a book is actually inciting hatred, inciting violence?
Absolutely. I would be against any religious text to be burnt, not just the, Quran, because Islamism is an extreme. And a lot of 2 billion people across the world, uphold that religious text as a form of their identity.
Well, let's talk about those 2 billion people.
That is actually taken away from those people that actually do that. You're trying to say that Islamists and that text, it goes hand in hand, and that's where there's a problem.
No, I think that he said, well, Islamists and that text do go hand in hand. Also, regular Muslims who don't follow the extremes of that ideology go hand in hand. But, of course, the two are connected. But he would argue, and others would argue, that actually some of the people who are most affected by blasphemy laws are Muslims. Within Muslim-majority countries, doing something like that will get you killed, has led to people being killed.
But that's the thing, that's not blasphemy laws. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You can have blasphemy laws in those countries which, they actually will not even allow you to speak against a faith or whatever. That's blasphemy laws. You guys are not understanding the terminology. But the fact that it leads to hate and incitement, I'm talking about the laws that are existing in this country that protects all faith. And I think that, Britain is one of those few democracies which is soft secular and the best in the world that actually has a sort of, a tolerance for all faiths and actually protects even the minorities.
But the other people, of course, that we have to tolerate is people who don't have any faith, right?
Faith and no faith. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. No, but the point is that there are people out there who don't believe in Allah or God or Jesus, but they have the right. But they have the right to express even their hatred of those ideologies.
They can express it, but not in that way. Because I wouldn't. If you have a child tomorrow, they don't like something, they don't, want anything to, happen in the way they want, so they can go and burn what the other person cares about.
Yes, they can. That's the law in this country.
What we are fighting antisocial behaviour. We are trying to set a standard and a precedent.
So
this is not about.
So if you don't mind, could I ask you a question? Sorry. Do you think, if it's antisocial, that if someone went to a Harry Potter convention and burnt a Harry Potter book, do you think that they should be arrested and be convicted?
You can't compare a religious text to that.
No, but if it's antisocial, if it's about burning a text... It is antisocial, absolutely. But for some people, do you understand? Like, I know you believe in the word of...
I understand that, but at the end of the day, I would respect the fact that that person that's going in there in public, burning whatever it is that someone else likes, it shouldn't be happening. That's why
it's not about whether it should be happening. The question is, it can happen because we have the laws that should protect and do protect people for it.
It can't happen.
Well, it does happen.
The public law order and the Equalities Act and all of this humanitarian acts that are there, it does protect people, whether it's of faith and no faith. This is not just about people of my faith.
So, Alejandro, are atheists protected here? Their rights to protest an ideology that they fundamentally disagree with?
Well, Hamid's right to freedom of expression certainly wasn't protected in this case. And what I would say to Fahima is that the CPS and the judge, they both acknowledged that damaging a religious text is not in itself a crime. But what we have here is a Public Order Act being repurposed as a proxy blasphemy law. And it seems like because Hamid was attacked by a knifeman for expressing his views, that is, at least in part, the basis on which his conduct has been deemed disorderly. So this is victim blaming. It's creating a heckler's veto that encourages violent reprisals. And it's a means of appeasing religious fundamentalists. And as we can see, it's sort of depressingly predictable. Hamid Koskin received an Osman warning from the Metropolitan Police at 2 a.m. last night. There is an imminent threat against his life. So when you try to appease fundamentalists, they're just emboldened.
Well, there's an argument for... there's an argument that this is actually offensive to regular Muslims. The idea that a regular Muslim wouldn't be able to respond without violence towards someone burning what they consider to be a holy text.
I do not condone
Like, we
that
have to protect them from their own violence.
No, at the end of the day, I do feel that that response should not have been. I do not think that anyone who, doesn't like what he did should have done that. That's absolutely incorrect. And I do not condone that kind of behaviour. We are going to find extremists, we are going to find things like that, but that should not portray the fact that when you do something like that, we have to understand how society and behaviours work. And when you are putting forward that if you don't like something, and instead of doing a peaceful protest without having to burn and desecrate, leading to hate and incitement, which in this public law order and the acts and the hatred kind of regulations adhere to, it keeps this country more civil than anywhere else in the world, because we have some sort of civilization of where it is free to speak, but with responsibility.
Okay,
that's the problem that we're not understanding. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding that, not everyone, like you and I, we can talk here, we can say things, but people on the streets, we cannot control that. So these laws and orders keeps it in hand. We don't realize that, what's happening in the US and what's happening in the sort of like European states, and I've traveled worldwide. This is the main country, I would say, in the entire world that keeps it civil, because we have those protections for everyone.
But it sounds like you're arguing that if we don't have a law like this, then it's going to be uncivil. The point is that we have laws to protect us, and it's up to the individuals to remain civil. So it puts the onus on people in our society to not respond with violence to remain
every
civil.
Company, every business, even in this place when we're speaking, we're regulated by the Ofcom, whatever it may be, in Ofsted, in schools, there is always going to be some sort of regulation. We're not here. There's no such thing as absolute free. And when you have that in the US, you see the riots that are happening for days. You see that people that are even inciting hate covered by those kind of free speeches.
So
it really does.
Because that's part of what the judge said was this was the argument that it was going to incite. This man, he hated Muslims because he burnt the book. Even though the guy said this is an ideology that I have an issue with.
Yeah.
What do you think about this argument? The idea is if you hate the ideology, you hate the followers of the ideology.
No, not at all. That doesn't follow. That's a conflation.
But this is what the judge said, essentially.
Well, we think he's mistaken in his assessment. Mohammed didn't use the word Muslims during his protest, and I think that's really telling. He was talking about Islam, Islamisms, and the doctrines that follow from that.
Yeah. Do you think that I know you said you don't think that any religious text should be burned, but do you recognise this what people are talking about in terms of a two-tier
no, because I see both sides.
No, but do you see any... I don't see anybody getting arrested for burning a Bible in front of Westminster Abbey, for example. That just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen because no one's done it. You go and see if someone... at the end of the day, if someone was to go burn a Torah tomorrow, it wouldn't be like, oh, it's free speech. It would be anti-Semitic.
No, I'm sorry, I disagree. I disagree with you there, because
you might disagree,
anybody could burn the Torah. The point is that's an ideology. If people have issues with an ideology, I don't have a problem.
That is the ideology.
But that's a separation. But you see there's a separation between the two.
But people always treat Islam completely different.
I don't think that they do.
You wouldn't think that. I'm telling you because I am the victim of it. I am sitting on the other end and I see this happening, whether it's me and anyone else.
But that's not to say that anti-Muslim bigotry isn't real. But do you think that anybody should be able to criticise Islam without being an anti-Muslim bigot?
We criticise each other all the time. Between us Muslims, we do that all the time, and we can do that here.
Yeah, but the problem is that criticism, unfortunately, leads to violence in many Muslim countries.
Why are you talking about there? We're talking about the laws here. We are here
unfortunately, that's led to laws in this country as well between Muslims.
No, it's not. You're thinking
yeah, because unfortunately, you had the film come out a couple of years ago. A certain sect of Islam considered it offensive and went out and shut down what other Muslims believe was a totally valid film.
Look, they are going in.
That was shutting down their free speech, right?
Yeah. They were going out in protest. Anyone can go out in protest, but there are certain acts that is actually going to be incitement and hate, and that's why the law prescribes to that, and they have it very clear. If you have a problem, go and attack the law, the judicial system, the kind of protection acts that we have, because I see it as something that is there which keeps, the civilization going in this country, which is better than anywhere in the world.
Well, it's interesting.
And it's not actually because taking away freedom, it's doing it again in such a way that we can speak, but within reason. Because what are we showing our future children?
Well, this is the
what
point.
Are we doing all of
well, this is the
for?
point. I mean, I would argue I'd argue the same point, but from the opposite point of view is that putting on blasphemy laws like this is what threatens our society.
It's not blasphemy laws.
Would you agree with that? Well, it is. It's blasphemy laws by the back door.
No, it's not.
Well, if you've got somebody being found guilty
what the definition of blasphemy laws is. It means that you cannot speak at all. This is
but you're placing limits on a criticism of an ideology. That's blasphemy laws.
No, we're not. He can criticise. Just don't burn the book.
Sorry, Alejandro, we're going to let you speak because we believe in free speech, but it's just me and you, fan man.
I would point Fahima to the words of Lord Justice Sedley in the Court of Appeal, and he said that free speech includes the heretical, the unwelcome, the provocative, and he said free speech that only includes the right to speak inoffensively isn't worth having. And I think that is what is happening today.
Well, you know what?
I would take the words of Jesus, peace be upon him, where he wouldn't like this. We come in and we talk about Christianity. It does not come in line with British values.
I think Jesus would.
Nor does it come
Jesus
in line.
probably would stand up for them, but whatever.
I would prefer a country that is more Christian, and these things would not happen because that is not in line with even any faith that would happen.
Well, I personally worry that our country would be over if we were unable to criticise Islam in an extreme fashion. And criticise any religion, by the way. Any religion. But anyway, I'm going to go and burn my copy of Da Vinci Code. But I want to give a big thank you very much to my guests, the political commentator Fahima Mohammed and campaigns officer at the National Secular Society, Alejandro Sanchez. Coming up, Andrew Doyle will be joining me shortly. But next on Free Speech Nation, my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. Back in a moment. And again, thank you very much to my guests for joining us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain. We like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. My comedian guests this evening are Leo Kearse and Paul Cox. How are you guys? Leo, I haven't seen you on the show for ages.
I know, because I do headliners on Sunday, usually, but not
it's
tonight.
a treat to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Paul, I see you all the time. So, we are going to get into some questions from our audience. Our first question's from Ryan.
Evening all.
All right, officer.
Very serious question to start with. Okay. Are men allowed to play with themselves in their sheds?
Indeed. OK, first of all, if anyone give me a biro so I could just complete the maze on your top, that would be wonderful. So, should men be allowed to play with themselves in their shed? This is the Men's Sheds movement. They were founded to support older men facing loneliness through male-only hands-on social spaces. Critics argue that recent moves towards mixed-gender inclusion, especially under the new UK MSA CEO Caroline Ellis, undermine its core purpose. Maintaining male-only sheds is seen as vital for men's mental health and peer bonding. So, what do you think, Ryan? I mean, men should be able to hang out in a shed, shouldn't they?
Yeah, this is just all part of a trend now. We've had issues like, for example, lesbian speed dating hasn't been allowed, you know, and there's an absolute attack on people congregating, you know, single sex, for example. So I think they absolutely should be allowed.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. I think people here agree. Although I would like to see a sort of joint lesbian event with men's old people in a shed. I think it'll be a nice collaboration between the two. Oh, no, well, someone doesn't like that.
No, just all the lesbians don't like that, Josh.
You don't know that they're lesbians?
No, I don't.
OK.
She has it written on her top. She self-identified.
Is that what it is? The stereotypes.
Same as Josh.
And the hissing. So, what do you think about this, Leo?
Well, the weird thing is that the woman who's sort of barged her way into the men's spaces here is also wasn't she a former chief executive of Stonewall or something? Yeah, so Stonewall is the organisation that wants to barge its way into women's spaces. It's like nobody can have a space. And men's sheds are essentially, I mean, we know we've got to have somewhere to store the lawnmower, but if we're being real about it, it's just a place to masturbate in peace. So why women would want to be barging into that space? I mean, it was a space to cure male loneliness. I'm not too sure why you'd want to cure loneliness in a place for pleasuring yourself.
I'm not sure masturbation gets rid of loneliness, Leo.
But isn't the argument against this is that the idea is that men and women socialise and interact in a different way?
Yes. I mean, there's a couple of things here straight away.
This is how we like it. That's what we're always doing in our shed.
That's the movement I'm starting, anyway. I mean, I want to start with Caroline Ellis, by the way, and it's not a conspiracy theorist to say this, but she's turned Stonewall into something for gay and lesbian people, into a trans activist movement that absolutely ruins Stonewall for everybody else.
Well, you winning over the lesbian base.
Just had a quick look around the room, thought I was safe with that one. I only ask for two things. Leave children alone and leave my shed alone. That is all I ask for. That's all we need. You know, how on earth has Caroline Ellis got this role? Who has decided this? Not the 75-year-old men that are the cohort that exists with. By the way, this was set up in Australia in the 1980s, came to the UK about 10 years ago. It's a movement for people that are retired, men mainly, or if not only, that have got lonely because they don't know what to do with their time. They've come out of a working life, they're no longer working, they've got their shed, and they're being told it's OK. How are these people now feeling? Has anyone asked them? How are they feeling that they're being co-opted into this, what is bound to be an ideology within months?
Well, look at this. That's
I think she's going to start transitioning the men. That's what's going to happen.
And the sheds.
Yeah. Soon they're going to identify as a swimming pool. this is actually something that I saw happening a few years ago. I was wondering where the end of gender ideology led to. But in the sense of, you know, there was is it the third wave of feminism, fourth wave? Men and women are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I would argue that one thing that's come through from this recognition that men and women are different is that reality, that actually now we can move back to a form of feminism that recognises that both sexes need their own spaces.
But then you meet men who read The Guardian and women who read The Guardian, and you see that they are actually the same.
It's a problem. It's a problem. Fair enough. Yeah. Put them in the shed. Our next question, I wish I had a shed. Can't afford a garden. Right, our next question's from Henry.
Does it make you a terrorist if you express concern that Islamism may be a threat to Western culture?
Yeah, are you a terrorist? OK. Are you a terrorist if you think Islamism is a threat to Western culture? So, in a moment, we're just going to recommend Henry to prevent.
He's just recommended himself on live TV.
So this is government training materials for the PREVENT programme classify concern over mass migration as a potential indicator of terrorist ideology, sparking free speech concerns. Obviously, critics warn that the broad definition of cultural nationalism could label mainstream political figures and lawful views as extremists. Are you familiar with this term, Henry, cultural nationalism?
Yes, I mean, if you're a political leader like Sir Keir Starmer, well, then you can make a speech about Island of Strangers and be exempted from this particular rule, but to everybody else, clearly it applies.
Well, this is it, exactly, yeah. That's a great point. Tell you what about lesbians, they sure love a clap, don't they?
Just as long as they're using their hands.
Yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous, right? Because, of course, Keir Starmer, Robert Jenner, any politician nowadays is recognising that there is this issue of cultural coherence. Yeah. And if you point it out, that means now, of course, you'd be recommended to prevent.
If you drop your children off at a pop concert, you're not worried about cultural nationalists. You know, Douglas Murray going in there with a rucksack in his back and blowing up, 20-odd kids. It's an absolute disgrace. Prevent were set up to de-radicalise terrorists, and because of the mission creep, because of all of our institutions, there's been this long march through them by communists. They now, Prevent is now steered away from them and is trying to combat the people in Britain who actually have a head still screwed on their shoulders. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about this, Paul, in terms of people with Brexty books, as we saw the man, arrested for sending out a tweet, but the police were looking around, going, oh, he's got Brexty books.
Well, the problem with that is that everybody I know is now a terrorist. So it's a bit, and most people in this room, I fear, as well. So, look, you can take this example and you can place it anywhere else. Take this example of labelling the definition of terrorism. You've got to change it in order for Prevent to be able to say what they do. You've got to change what a woman is in order for people to accept trans ideology. You've just got to keep changing the narrative until this one world order gets its way. So we're just seeing the same thing being played out across the piece. And unfortunately, what happens is words like terrorism get undermined, words like racism get undermined. Everybody's labelled as a terrorist. Everybody's labelled as racist. And meanwhile, the racists and the terrorists are just going about their merry way. They missed the terrorist in Southport last year. They missed him. A young lad was on their radar. They missed him. There is no need to change what the narrative is. There's no need to change what the definition is. We know what it is, and we know where it is. We just need to openly talk about it.
Spoken like a true racist. So, our next question's from Penny.
Hello. Is Brazil the most dangerous place in the world to be a comedian?
Yeah, Brazil, the most dangerous place in the world to be a comedian. So this is Brazilian comedian Leo Lins. He was sentenced to over 8 years in prison for hate speech and defamation after making racist, homophobic and offensive jokes in a viral 2022 stand-up show. The court ruled his routine incited discrimination against multiple minority groups. So we hear a lot about free speech being under threat in the UK, but if people are going to jail for jokes in Brazil for 8 years, that's terrifying, right?
Yeah. But I think Hackney's pretty difficult to play as a comedian, isn't it?
Right. It's Penny from the block there. Leo, what do you think about that? I mean, we talk about this, and last week we talked about Andrew Lawrence and his joke, and but there's a difference between being cancelled from a couple of comedy clubs and going to jail for 8.5 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'd rather go to jail. But it's jail in Brazil as well. It's going to be horrific. It'll give him lots of material for his next show, though. But I mean, this is the idea of like hate speech laws is saying, oh, you're motivated by hate, so we're going to deal with that. And it's like, what, you're peering into somebody's soul to see what their motivation was? I'm sure he wasn't motivated by hate. He's motivated by going out there and having a laugh and making people laugh. So he's making jokes. You know what I mean? And jokes are really important to sort of defuse cultural tensions and also shine a light. Say something that can't be said in polite society, and that's why people always come for the jesters, come for the jokers. All through history, the court jester walked a fine line where he could be rewarded or he could have his head cut off. So we're still seeing it, and it's interesting this is happening in Brazil under a left-wing government. The left used to be, I'm sure when I was a kid, the left were campaigning for seditious and controversial works to be shown in theatres, and now they're the Puritans standing outside trying to get it shut down.
Yeah. Well, look, our final question for the moment is from Mike.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, Mike.
Is a trigger warning on 1984 a warning on a warning?
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Yes. So, this is somewhat Orwellian. The Orwell estate is under fire for adding a trigger warning to 1984, calling protagonist Winston Smith problematic. Critics argue the preface undermines Orwell's message against ideological control. The new introduction by author Dolin Perkins Valdez notes that the book's lack of racial diversity and sexism is a problem to her enjoyment of it. Yes, this is bizarre, right?
Well, I don't think there should be trigger warnings on anything. If you don't like what you see, don't watch it. If you don't like what you hear, don't listen to it. If you don't like what you read, stop reading it.
Yeah, no, I think that's... Paul, a trigger warning on 1984.
No, I mean, the irony.
This is getting very meta now.
This is ridiculous. And by the way, she shouldn't be the arbiter. That person there sounds like the most boring person in the world. Yeah. I don't want to read books she thinks is OK for me to read.
Because she said I was reading it and I was sort of enjoying it, and then Winston seemed like quite problematic. I don't read books so I can agree with the protagonist.
Can you imagine having books without problematic characters in it? Yeah. It'd just be like Mr. Tumble episodes over and over and over. The whole point of 1984 is it's problematic. The most problematic thing about 1984 is we're now living it in 2025. This is lovely.
Yeah, in fact, he was obviously a bit of a rubbish writer. He did it
in 1948.
Can't this person just wait for the Netflix remake where he's obviously going to be black and non-sexist? So it's going to be remade like that. But yeah, the only warning that needs to be on 1984 is for Keir Starmer not to use it as an instruction manual.
Very good. Coming up, Andrew Doyle is back to launch a new free speech charter for the UK. He's going to join me shortly. But next on Free Speech Nation, author Tim Samuels will explain why white men are being silenced at work. See you in a couple of minutes.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
High pressure is in charge for much of Europe over the next couple of days, bringing plenty of dry, warm and sunny weather. However, there will still be one or two showers around, particularly across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, as we go through Monday afternoon. But elsewhere, high pressure in charge, bringing dry, sunny and some really warm weather over the next couple of days. We could see temperatures into the high 20s, perhaps even into the low 30s across parts of Spain, Portugal and across parts of Italy too. But plenty of sunshine is on the cards.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the week ahead is set to remain fairly changeable, but one thing what we'll all notice towards the end of the week is it turning increasingly warm and humid. So out there at the moment we do have this area of high pressure trying to build in, and that will kill off most of the showers this evening, giving us fairly lengthy clear skies, especially across many eastern and central parts of the UK. Further west we will continue to see some showers as the night goes on, but under the clear skies it will turn fairly fresh for the time of year. Could also see some mist and fog patches forming, but most towns and cities I think holding up into double figures. So as we start Monday morning off across many southern parts of the UK, it's going to be a fairly cheery start to the day once any early mist and fog patches clear. Could just be the odd shower around, but I think for many southern parts of England and South Wales, it should be fairly dry. Maybe an increased risk of showers for Northern England, and then a very different story for Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Increasing cloud through the course of the morning with some outbreaks of rain. Saying that eastern Scotland, we will start the day with some sunshine, but make the most of it because the cloud and rain further west will spread its way towards you as we go through the course of the morning. And overall for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be a fairly cloudy and wet day that rain heavy at times, and will eventually move into parts of Northern England and the far north of Wales as we move into the afternoon. So it's really going to be the southern parts of the UK what hangs on to the fairly dry and bright weather, and you can see that in the temperatures too, rather cool in the north, but could see highs reaching 21 in the south. Overnight the rain will clear away, but it will leave behind a fair amount of cloud and some damp weather for southern England and South Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland and eventually into Northern England too, a much better day with increasing amounts of sunshine here. That will set us up for a fairly dry and bright middle part of the week, but then it turns increasingly warm, humid and potentially thundery for some of us as we end the week ahead.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. A survey by JL Partners has found 36% of white men have concerns about being held back at work, losing out on promotions because of their race and gender. In a new documentary series, award-winning filmmaker Tim Samuels investigates what it's like being a man in today's DEI-driven workplaces and the detrimental impact on free speech and men's mental health. Joining me now to discuss if white men are being silenced at work, I'm joined by the author and broadcaster Tim Samuels. Tim, what a strange journey we both find ourselves on here, because the first time I became aware of you, you were very much part of the, like myself really, the BBC, The Guardian, like you were, enmeshed in that world. You were doing think pieces, you were doing the radio series on Radio 4 about, like, sort of Men's Hour, and now here you are a few years later pointing out some of the dangers of what is sort of sacrosanct for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So for this new series, which is White Men Can't Work, which is a sort of podcast and YouTube show, it comes from, I guess, sort of, for me, sort of core liberal values, like old-school liberal values, where I kind of believe in fairness, in free speech, in meritocracy, in treating people with kind of decency and humanity.
You're on the right TV show, by the way.
Right. No one's walked out.
You're amongst friends.
Yeah. But what you find is the measures which have come in recent years, whilst, let's say that they do mean well, the results have been quite disastrous in many cases. And the angle I came at was looking at it from a sort of male point of view and what's happening to men and their mental health. And we found that it's been a real impact. And, nearly half of all guys, white men that we surveyed, are self-censoring at work, and they won't say what's on their minds. And it's not just, I'm desperate to be sexist and racist and I can't. It's guys who are too scared to give honest feedback. In meetings, there's been a lack of humanity in the way people are treated. So a college lecturer I spoke to lost his job for a series of microaggressions that were built up against him, including referring to the male and female ends of cables, which are, industry standard. And here's a guy that lost his job of 20 years and fell into a very deep depression. And crucially, it doesn't the sort of DEI diversity schemes, when you look at them, they don't tangibly benefit women or people from ethnic minority backgrounds as well. Because they are so divisive, they cause a backlash. So when you go into an office and you tell the guys there that, by the way, you're all very privileged and you're implicitly racist, you just don't know it, there's a backlash. So my argument is, yeah, let's tackle discrimination, but in much smarter, more evidence-led ways that don't demonise men and actually help the people they were meant to help. But it's very hard to say this in this day and age without being pigeonholed as, well, you must be a crazy right-wing lunatic to think that, or you've become a weird white supremacist since I last saw you. But I just think it's kind of core old-school liberal and British values to stand up for free speech, for fairness, not wasting billions of pounds on schemes that don't work, and trying to sort of help people without putting other people down.
Yeah, no, I mean, the crazy thing is that, and what you're talking about, I imagine, is someone might sort of go along with, their pronouns. They say, now, if you don't want to be a bigot, and they might not agree with gender ideology, but they feel like, oh, suddenly I have to write that he, him on every one of my emails. Or, obviously, we had Black Lives Matter coming along and not identifying some of the issues within the Black Lives Matter movement. So your documentary series is sort of following this, particularly this episode that came out just a few days ago, deals with men not being able to actually voice their concerns.
Yeah, so what we've found through the polling is that there's just an awful lot of self-censorship. And I'm not saying some of that's good, over the years, guys have said things they really shouldn't have said at work, but it's just reached the point now where people are sitting in meetings and they won't speak out. There's an NHS therapist who was saying, when he was training, he didn't want to make points because he was criticised for sort of bringing his kind of white male presence into the room, and he said that's not a good way to go about this. There's a student at Exeter University in this episode of the show who was having a private conversation on the phone to a friend, and through the dorm wall, his neighbour didn't like what she was hearing, and so she went to university security. They turned up, as he said, put their boots in the door. He then got sanctioned and ended up having to leave halls and drop out of his course for a while, and it cost him thousands of pounds because of a private conversation overheard through a wall. Like, you have the right to have a private conversation in your room, just as, this lecturer was driven out. There's a guy at Chicago University we interviewed who received the hiring directive that his department shouldn't really hire any white or Asian men because they were trying to redress what they saw as the kind of imbalance. And he just says, it's so simplistic. I've got guys from very underprivileged backgrounds who've worked really hard to get here. Why are they being discriminated against? I want the best people. I'm working on climate science. And he was just saying, but to question this is, in his case, the students turned against him. He had a big lecture cancelled. Whereas it just feels like we sort of slightly lost track of what all this was meant to do. We are meant to, treat each other better. We've had racism, we had sexism, it still exists, we need to deal with it. But by dealing with it in this way, it feels very, very counterproductive. And I think for men as well, the risk is it radicalises men. It drives you towards kind of more extreme populism, it drives people to Andrew Tate and people like that. Because when you can't speak freely, that anger that gets suppressed, and it has to come out somewhere.
The resentment is part of it. Well, have you found, what's the response been to this documentary series? Do you think that it's sort of tapped into this, allowing a release valve to be able to acknowledge this?
Yeah, I got an email yesterday. I was sat reading it over breakfast, and a guy got in touch, and it's so telling. He said, I'm using an email anonymizer to scramble my email.
That's insane.
I'm a sort of CEO level, and I've just been listening to White Men Can't Work, which, it's an ironic title. It's not based White Men Can't Jump. Don't take me at face value. And so I've just been listening to that, and I actually feel heard. I've been on the verge of tears listening to it because he said I've worked really hard all my career to try and promote people not based on any prejudice, and I very firmly believe in all this stuff. But I feel that. He said, it's essentially, I feel like I'm living through a dystopia at the moment where I can't speak freely and I'm being judged for who I am. So I think amongst a lot of guys and women, there's there is a release valve element to it. But, you know, because I'm doing this respectfully, I'm not sort of screaming and shouting, it's a balanced documentary. But just to sort of take stock of why are we running schemes that don't work? And, you know, also hearing from, you know, we also overlook the fact that there are plenty of, and I've heard this from, you know, people from minorities who say that they now feel, oh, so that's how you got your job, rather than on merit. Yeah. And women who've said to me they don't like being seen as DEI hires when they've got there on merit. So it feels like there's a sort of cynicism to this, where companies, you know, they want the big PR announcement overnight. Okay. We fix this. Okay. But ultimately, it's been quite damaging.
Well, you should tell the CEO to watch Free Speech Nation, and we should watch your documentary, White Men Can't Work. Thank you very much, the broadcaster and author Tim Samuels. Coming up, Andrew Doyle's going to join me in a bit. But next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by Ollie. He's a street preacher of the gospel who has been stopped from preaching by the police. Is free speech under attack? See you in a couple of minutes.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A gospel preacher in Brighton has been moved along by police after bystanders claimed his message caused them anxiety. Officers cited hate speech laws, but the preacher says he was simply sharing his faith in Jesus. The incident was sparking a huge debate online over religious freedom and free speech in modern Britain, and we are joined by him now, Ollie Sabatelli. Welcome, Ollie. How intimate are you with free speech laws? I'm imagining if you're out there and you're preaching, you've got to know your stuff, right?
Fairly clued up.
Yeah, so do you think that this idea of causing hate speech is another way of trying to curtail street preachers?
Essentially, wherever you preach the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ, it brings conviction of sin upon people, which angers them, and you actually receive a lot of opposition purely because it's actually conviction from the word of God going forth.
So what do you mean by conviction? Do you think that it's because you're saying things that they deliberately antagonise them?
No, it's literally it's preaching the word of God. So when you preach the word of God, it's essentially like a sword. It's a sharp sword, and it pierces to the heart of the listeners. And when they receive the conviction for their sins, they actually end up getting agitated, and then they use the hate speech laws to try and come against.
Could you give me an example?
Many a time I've been out preaching in Brighton. A lot of.
I mean, what you might be saying, like that would then antagonise them.
It's anything, any quote on the Bible about sin. You know, speaking about how the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God. From certain books in the Bible. When I speak these verses, then people will hear that, and because it angers them, they now will.
That's not everybody, though, is it? I mean, you said it to me, I'd be like, all right.
Not everybody, but many people. Yes, many people.
And they're going to the police and saying.
Yeah. I preach in Brighton, and obviously it's supposed to be a very inclusive city, but obviously when I'm preaching, inclusive of everything but the Lord Jesus Christ, and when I go and preach there. Often I'm having people call up the police saying that I've said things that I haven't, which is why I actually record, so I can have footage and show the police and say, look, this is what I've said. I've directly been...
And is this a situation you think is getting worse?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I mean, constantly I'm being persecuted, not just like by police. People are trying to attack me for sharing my faith, preaching repentance of our sins in the Lord Jesus Christ, to be baptised and receive the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Well, look, we have a right of reply. We're going to read that in the next section because we do have to go to an interval with the news. Okay. Ollie, thank you very much.
God bless you.
God bless you too. No, you can stay there. It's all good. We'll hear more about that. So, yeah, exactly.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the week ahead is set to remain fairly changeable, but one thing what we'll all notice towards the end of the week is it turning increasingly warm and humid. So out there at the moment we do have this area of high pressure trying to build in, and that will kill off most of the showers this evening, giving us fairly lengthy clear skies, especially across many eastern and central parts of the UK. Further west we will continue to see some showers as the night goes on, but under the clear skies it will turn fairly fresh for the time of year. Could also see some mist and fog patches forming, but most towns and cities I think holding up into double figures. So as we start Monday morning off across many southern parts of the UK, it's going to be a fairly cheery start to the day once any early mist and fog patches clear. Could just be the odd shower around, but I think for many southern parts of England and South Wales it should be fairly dry. Maybe an increased risk of showers for Northern England, and then a very different story for Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Increasing cloud through the course of the morning with some outbreaks of rain. Saying that, Eastern Scotland, we will start the day with some sunshine, but make the most of it because the cloud and rain further west will spread its way towards you as we go through the course of the morning. And overall for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be a fairly cloudy and wet day that rain heavy at times, and will eventually move into parts of Northern England and the far north of Wales as we move into the afternoon. So it's really going to be the southern parts of the UK what hangs on to the fairly dry and bright weather, and you can see that in the temperatures too, rather cool in the north, but could see highs reaching 21 in the south. Overnight the rain will clear away, but it will leave behind a fair amount of cloud and some damp weather for southern England and South Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and eventually into Northern England too, a much better day with increasing amounts of sunshine here. That will set us up for a fairly dry and bright middle part of the week, but then it turns increasingly warm, humid and potentially thundery for some of us as we end the week ahead.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Oh my God!
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but first, get a news update from Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight. National Guard troops are now on the streets of Los Angeles, setting up outside federal buildings after days of unrest in the city over immigration raids in predominantly Latino neighbourhoods. Donald Trump, the president, has ordered 2,000 troops into the city, saying protests that block immigration enforcement constitute a rebellion. They'll be deployed for 60 days, with the Defence Secretary making the final call on their presence. California's governor, though, has slammed the move as inflammatory, while Democrats say it's authoritarian overreach. But some Republicans insist the troops are there to stop tensions spiralling. Meanwhile, the fallout between the President Donald Trump and Elon Musk is fuelling fears over deep cuts to NASA's science programme. The White House is proposing slashing NASA's budget by nearly a quarter, with critics warning it could be the agency's worst crisis in decades. Trump has threatened to withdraw contracts with SpaceX, which NASA relies on to reach the Moon and Mars. Space experts say vital climate and planetary missions could also be scrapped, and warn the space programme is being, they say, repurposed for flags, not science. More than 60,000 NHS appointments were cancelled during just 5 days last summer, including many for cancer patients. Figures seen exclusively by GB News reveal that 63,000 procedures were scrapped during July strikes, including vital biopsies and X-rays. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is now urging doctors to reconsider further strike plans, warning the disruption risks delaying life-saving diagnosis. Israel's defence minister has vowed to stop an aid flotilla carrying Greta Thunberg and other activists from reaching Gaza. The vessel, Michelin, operated by the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, left Sicily last week. They say they aim to break Israel's naval blockade and deliver humanitarian aid. However, Israel Katz said no boat will be allowed through and called the blockade essential to stop arms from reaching Hamas. It comes as tensions are high after a previous flotilla attempt was struck by drones in international waters. And Sir David Attenborough has urged urgent action to save the world's oceans. He told Prince William, "We must act before we destroy this great treasure."
The thing which I am appalled by when I first saw the shots that were taken for this film are what we have done to the deep ocean floor.
Well, the pair was speaking after a private screening of Ocean, a new documentary narrated by Sir David Attenborough that exposes the damage from overfishing and deep-sea trawling. Prince William, who calls Attenborough his inspiration, will address world leaders at a marine summit and urge urgent, optimistic action. The film supports protecting 30% of marine areas by 2030, a goal that both men say could help the oceans to recover. Those are the latest headlines for now. Do stay with us for plenty more right here on GB News.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So I just want to have say a quick apology to Ollie. He was our last guest. We had to cut it a little bit short to go to the news. But thank you very much for coming in, Ollie. He will forgive me, as he's a Christian, of course. And he's also very handsome. Did you see him? Did you see him?
Sorry, a little bit, yeah. He was talking about Christian persecution. And this in this country, not just Syria.
Yeah, well, exactly. But he is good-looking enough to be a BBC newsreader.
Right.
If he wants to go down that route.
But he doesn't have any of those proclivities, so... he's a good man, good Christian man.
I have to read out the right reply. Sussex police told us police were called to New Road in Brighton around 12:30 p.m. on Friday to report of a man alleged to be broadcasting hate speech through a loudspeaker. Officers attended and engaged with the man and members of the public at the scene. Following a conversation with officers, the man voluntarily chose to leave the area. No police powers were used to remove the man from the scene. Right, we are going to go straight into some questions from our audience. Our first question is from Gavan.
Yeah, good evening. Is it OK for men to look at female nurses undressing?
Is it OK for men to look at female nurses undressing? Thank you, Gavan, for that. And how's the scrumpy?
Not today.
Normally you wear your GB News cap.
I know. I didn't realise until I came out and made a mistake.
This is
my backup cap. Anyway.
This is your backup cap.
I like that we're now just dealing with moral dilemmas from members of the audience. He just wants to know if he can stand and look through those curtains.
As long as he identifies as a woman. So the Darlington nurses, they've won their legal case against their employer. Yes. Rightly so. After raising concerns about a biological male who identifies as a woman and goes by the name of Rose being allowed to use the female staff changing room, their victory comes after Health Secretary Wes Streeting intervened personally, instructing the hospital to provide the nurses with separate changing facilities. Leo, the thing is, the fact that Wes Streeting is the person who had to come in to sort this out, I see that as an issue. This would have gone to court, they would have lost because, of course, they were breaking the law. Yeah. But the fact they even got this far is totally emblematic of what we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah,
disgusting.
It can't just be like one group of women get changed without a bloke looking at them. You know what I mean? And also, the internet is just made of naked women. Like, there's plenty of naked women to look at. Why have you got to go and look at these nurses? I bet I could show this guy pictures of naked women who are actually more attractive than these nurses. You know what I mean? He's missing a trick here. Okay. He's picking a fight where it's not needed. No, listen, honestly, I've got my phone right here. You can see what you want. You can see what you want. I could show you some nurses right now.
Well, one half will like those. Paul, we got what? I mean, in all seriousness, though, reading the accounts of these nurses, what they had to go through, in terms of this person, he would hang out in there and go, "Oh, are you getting changed yet?" Yeah, this man. I know.
It's a woman.
He would stand. That's why I said he.
She.
But that's what he'd do. He'd stay in there and he would say, "Why aren't you getting changed?" Like it's insane.
Yeah, it's a crime.
Yeah,
is what it is. You know, no one other than a man would stand in a woman's changing room and go, "Are you getting changed yet?" That's not happening unless you're a man, is it? Even the lesbians in the room aren't in women's changing rooms going, "Are you getting changed yet?" Because they know naturally they will.
Depends on which videos you watch, but. But this, do you? What I was just saying to Leo about this, how the fact that Wes Streeting had to intervene on this.
Well, by the way, having a member of the cabinet, the Health Secretary, having to intervene to make sure that women can be safe in their jobs in a hospital of all places is preposterous. But it's also endemic of what is happening in 2025. We have the highest, most powerful people in the country have to step in and say to a hospital authority, "Do you mind making the women safe in your hospital just for a little bit, please?" And by the way, this is only a very minor victory. It's only a victory for the female nurses in Darlington. It's not a victory across the NHS. That battle still has to be won.
And the wider culture is still fully supportive of this weird trans ideology, which is a new religion. It's because I'm a transgender woman. You might not like it. Sorry. You know, I know there's some enemies of transgender. I'm a genuine transgender woman because you know what? I say I'm a transgender woman, and that's all it needs. That's all it needs. And then all these incredible David Tennant, everybody's going to be like, "Well, this woman should be allowed into this women's changing room." That's an insane religion.
Well, look, if you're a transgender woman, I would ask you, Leo, if you could please stop staring at me when I go to the toilet.
There's just so much flesh on that head. Put a brow on it.
I don't know what angle you're seeing it from. So, next question is from Chris.
How racist is your food?
How racist is your food? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. Just asking the question is insane as well. Academics, they've criticised the prestigious Michelin guide, branding it racist and Eurocentric. They claim the guide, known for awarding its coveted stars to top restaurants overlooking vast regions of the world, including India and Africa, in favour of European and Western restaurants. You've got a meme you put out every day. What's racist today?
Yeah.
Food is racist.
There's always something that's racist, and right now the Michelin guide is racist. I mean, obviously it's going to be Eurocentric because it was set up in Europe. And
1900s. Weird, that.
It's like saying, why is TripAdvisor in Mogadishu so Mogadishu-centric? What they're actually saying, they're actually by claiming that it's racist that, you know, all these Michelin-starred restaurants are in France and places like that, they're actually being racist themselves because they're drawing attention to the fact that, yes, France does have more fine dining establishments than Somaliland. So, you know, if you want to change those statistics, why don't you go to Somaliland and invest some money opening some fine dining bistros with a 20-item tasting menu, and then, you know, all these freshly minted pirates can get off their boats and go and spend their wonga with you.
Fair enough. But I mean, the crazy thing is that the Michelin guide does actually go to different countries around the world. But they say, oh, because they haven't gone to India specifically. Well, they've given 3 stars to various Indian restaurants in other countries.
Well, I've not read the guide, but I guarantee you one thing. It's not racist. I guarantee it's not racist. The prism of racism now and the word racist is so stretched that there's no chance that it's racist because no one really understands what racism means anymore. Racism can mean anything you like just to make sure you win an argument. That's what it means. If someone shouts racism, I just assume that they are losing an argument. That's all I assume. I don't assume anything else other than that. It also says it's
That's a shame
elitist.
because I spend quite a lot of time online shouting racist.
You're a big racist.
It also
says it's elitist, doesn't it?
Well, it also denigrates. Yeah, it should be elitist.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Michelin
star.
star.
You know what I mean?
It's not McDonald's.
Morally. But it also denigrates, the hard work that a lot of genuine racists put into being racist. And then, the Michelin star guide comes along and steals their thunder by being called racist when it's not even racist. That's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. And of course, the thing about food is that it's a cultural phenomenon. There's no such thing as like this isolated food that hasn't been touched by colonisation or in any other form. That's the whole point of food, is it spreads across the world.
Exactly. I mean, I'm almost, and this has never happened before, lost for words on this one because it's just utterly ridiculous. Food's not racist. Michelin star guide's not racist. Get over it.
And I just want to say that I didn't come to you first with this question. You're welcome.
Yeah, because I've been outside a Michelin star restaurant.
No, it's not that. No, it's just, I just didn't want to make you hungry. He's been on a diet for 6 months and looking fantastic. So our next question is from Anton.
Are young rich people more likely to be activists?
Yes, indeed. Are young rich people more likely to be activists? So this is middle-class students at elite universities like Oxford and Harvard are increasingly driven by what psychologists call privilege, guilt, fueling radical left activism. They embraced extreme causes from Gaza solidarity encampments to Just Stop Oil vandalism as a way to reject the very privilege that got them there. So this article, I bet you were reading this article and be like, duh.
That's my general thought process when I'm reading anything. But no, I think I haven't noticed so much of this at Dumfries and Galloway College of Technology. I think there is a sort of trend for elite institutions. That's where all this, critical race theory and really sort of harmful, caustic, communist ideas like that come from, and you can see where it ends. I mean, if you look at Iran in 1979, the students and the socialists allied with Islamists, as we're sort of seeing them allied now over the issue of Gaza, and they did that, and they toppled the Shah, they toppled, the West-leaning capitalist leader, and brought in this amazing socialist utopia. And what did the Islamists do when they got in? First thing they did was, I shouldn't be laughing so much, they executed the socialists, hung them from cranes, jailed them, tortured them. Actually, I should be laughing. That is still funny. So yeah, these students should be careful what they wish for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the students who threw paint, I think, over the sunflowers. Phoebe Plummer. That's surely the poshest name ever.
There's no activism from rich young people. It's just filling time between skiing and summer holidays. And I have no interest in what they have to say generally. I want to hear from the disenfranchised, the poor working class activist. And I say this obviously as a working class person, but it's not just the class thing. It's just these people are so dripping in the privilege, particularly the white ones, that get all the white privilege that I get accused of having myself.
But this is the point, is it's exactly that privilege that drives them down this route because they feel guilty about it.
Well, of course they do, and we don't care. Just stay skiing. Leave us alone, right? I want to hear from the real
advice
activists.
to rich people is just skiing. Be happy being rich.
Yeah, just get on with it. Keep the beans in the tin and go away.
I'm not familiar with this beans in the tin.
Well, don't chuck it over a painting in the Louvre or something.
Oh, I see. Fine, fair enough.
They're all beans you were thinking.
Oh, you're just bringing up food again. So our final question's from Joe.
Hi. So should the children of only Green and Labour voters be allowed to attend birthday parties?
Yeah, so should the children of only Green Labour voters be allowed birthday parties? This is Ellie Close. She's a Reform UK councillor from the northwest of England. Says her children were uninvited from a friend's daughter's birthday party simply because of her role in the party. She claims the decision was politically motivated and reflects growing intolerance towards those with right-leaning views. Do you have children, Joe?
I do.
You do?
They're all a lot older.
A lot older.
Actually.
What do you think about this? I mean, do you think this would have happened when they were little kids, that you would be banned from a birthday party for appearing here and asking a question on GB News?
I can't. It's changed a lot. If you're talking politics at the school gate, you need to kind of just get a life and chill out, because you shouldn't be talking politics at the school gate. It's silly.
Actually, if you just be...
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just think it's politics should be left for Maybe dinner parties, not at the school gate.
Yeah, oh, yeah, well, I'd dinner parties. I haven't been invited to any for a long time, so you've got a little kid. Have you had any reaction yet when you're dropping her off at nursery?
Yeah, in my Panzer tank.
But it's electric, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I think, leave politics out of it. I mean, it's not just because nobody wants to be known as the sort of the right-wing dad or whatever. But also, I think things are changing. We're seeing a preference cascade where a lot of people around the country who've been sort of kowtowing to the liberal sort of hegemony of all this mass immigration is an unadulterated good and trans women are women and all that. People are now sort of popping their heads up and realising, oh, wait a minute, other people think this is all nonsense as well. So we're going to see things quite rapidly shift in the other direction. And then it's going to be the lefties and the greenies who get disinvited, as they should be. They're communists. They're communists. They shouldn't be allowed to eat anything. They should be made to stand in a queue and then get one potato. Yeah. That's what these people should get.
Yeah, who wants to go to a far left birthday party anyway? Not me. They'll probably give out all the little babies' presents to everybody else.
Yeah. There's some nuance to this story, actually. This lady, I don't know if she was crowing about it at the school gates, because she's a reform counsellor.
She's an old friend of hers, right?
She's not an old friend of mine.
No, she's an old friend of this woman.
Yeah, she is. They've known each other 30 years, right? But so she was a counsellor, so people would have publicly known anyway. Also, she'd been friends for 30 years with this lady. She's been invited and disinvited to the second birthday of a trans child. That does not exist.
No, that's not what it is. It's just that what she was saying was, I wouldn't want it was a daughter. She said, as a hypothetical, if my daughter became trans, I wouldn't want my trans son to look at a photo and see you when they were 2 years old, which is, again, totally ridiculous.
There's no such thing as a 2-year-old trans person.
No, of course not. No, of course not.
That's like a vegan cat.
Yeah, yeah. But you're absolutely right. No one talks about politics at the school gate. But, don't just... I mean, this stuff shouldn't be news now. Leo's absolutely right. And I don't think this is even left and right anymore. It's like stupid and normal.
Yeah. No. That's exactly what it is. It is stupid and normal, but people are still beholden to the stupid, or they're scared from speaking out. Now, I've got my own past. My kids are a little bit older than yours, but I organised a comedy night for my children's school, or their nursery school, and one parent got very offended by me appearing on the channel. I did this for free, raised them a bunch of money, and then she kicked off and did a petition and basically got me banned from even giving my time freely to school. And by the way, this is a mother of one of my daughter's best friends who won't now allow her to hang out with my daughter. So these people, they exist, they are out there, and they are causing damage to people's lives.
I'm always more surprised by how secretly right-wing people are when you start talking to them. It's mad. When people feel that they've got an opportunity to say it without judgment.
But I don't know if this is even right-wing. I don't consider myself right-wing. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But this person who's on the far left would say, oh, look at him, he's on GB News saying that there are two sexes. He's a right-wing fascist or whatever. Kick him out of the nursery. But that's what happens. There's been real arguments on these WhatsApp groups, and I've been, getting them all fed back to me by my spy. Anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, a new group called Not All Gays is promoting the rights of lesbian, gay and bisexual individuals. They have launched their first conference in Dublin. They're going to join me next to tell me all about it. See you in a couple of minutes.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Let's go to our man Adam Cherry, who's at Waterloo Station this morning, to tell us more about this. You thinking of changing jobs, Adam?
What, to become a train driver? Yeah, I think, I don't know, I don't think I'll be very good at it. But nonetheless, those who might be are the 18-year-olds who are, the 18-year-olds who are now eligible. They have permission to start the training. I mean, the argument is that the average age of a train driver at the moment is, I think, about 40, try and get my words out here, 48 years old. And, you know, several thousands of them are coming up for retirement in the next few years. And so reducing the age from 20 to 18 is going to help stop all those last-minute cancellations that bug so many of us on our work commutes throughout the week, and try and put some slack in the system. Of course, at the moment, if it's 20, people are making decisions for their careers at the age of 18 anyway, so lots of them are just sort of missing the opportunity. Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, says it's basically about future-proofing the transport network, and it's a pretty effective and easy way to do it. It has overwhelming support within DFT, within Department of Transport and industry leaders. I'll just read you a quick quote from Mick Whelan, who is the General Secretary of ASLEF, which is the Train Drivers Union. At the moment, young people who want to become train drivers leave school at 18, get other jobs, as I was saying, and miss out on an industry. Miss out as the industry doesn't wait around until they turn 20 to find a career. So hopefully it'll stop all those last-minute cancellations which annoy everyone so much.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Looks a nice day where he is there.
Yeah, looks lovely, doesn't it? I think it is cold, though.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A new group called Not All Gays is calling for the protection of LGB rights. The group advocates for clear sex-based definitions, freedom of belief and fact-based education. Their mission to defend LG people from harmful policies. The thing is, they're in Ireland. I am now joined by Sean Atkinson, Vice President and co-founder of Not All Gays, and Aneg Birdie, President and co-founder of Not All Gays. Thank you very much for joining me here. Lots of fans. So, this is a big deal. Now, we've had in the UK the LGB Alliance. They have existed here for a couple of years now. But this is very much a new phenomenon in Ireland, right?
So we set up in 2023, but we're self-funded. We're all in our 20s and 30s. And in Ireland, the situation is slightly different. The Equality Act doesn't provide for sex-based protections the same way that the Supreme Court has now reaffirmed over here. And we set up because the hate speech laws really was our driving factor. They couldn't define hate, and we knew that we were called hateful for saying lesbians don't have romantic or sexual relationships with biological males, regardless of how they identify. And we knew that we would likely be investigated, as we've seen in Norway with some of the other lesbians and women over there. And so we set up because not all gays believe that saying facts is hate speech.
Well, this is it. So, Sean, what was the reaction when you set up then?
The reaction wasn't too huge. We've mostly been ignored by mainstream media. We wouldn't be having this conversation in the Irish media whatsoever. We've been completely thrown to the side, and any sex realist groups, TERFs, LGB groups were just completely ignored, and they only show one side of the conversation.
So is that part of the reason why you decided to set up a conference then, to create some awareness?
Yeah, we were hoping that we'd draw some media attention and show there's gays fighting back against these radical agendas, and we wanted to show that we're going to be loud, we're not going to go anywhere. We have conversations based on truth and reality, but no media in Ireland reported on it. Really? Wow, not at all?
No, it was a total media blackout.
Well, that's what they do, and they did a similar thing. But at the same time, we've seen this from other countries like Canada, Australia, still very much beholden to gender ideology, but there is a breaking point. And actually, we had it in the UK as well. It was just an article here, a tiny thing here, and then there was a kind of deluge. So I'm guessing, do you feel that could happen in Ireland?
I think it has to eventually. I think Sal Grover spoke via broadcast at the conference, and she said that this is not sustainable in a civil democracy. Like the control, the level of lying, like that everything is based on feelings and made up nonsense, that a man can be a woman or a lesbian. I think it's going to happen. We're just about, like, when I talk to other gender critical men and women from Ireland, we're about 10 years behind the UK.
You think really that much?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that what's happened within the UK, what the Supreme Court finding, and even things back to Maya Forstater's case, do you think that has made a difference within Ireland? That people look to the UK?
Hopefully, I think, now that, that was reported in Irish media, but only from the opposition side, no one in support of it. But it has opened the door to the conversation a little bit. So we are trying to squeeze in our perspective and, just holding up reality. But it's still very difficult.
So is this very much embedded within pretty much all institutions in terms of nurses not being able to have what we just saw today, the dentist nurses? So they don't have their own spaces?
No.
Lesbians aren't allowed to meet up with women?
We have full self-ID. It costs £10. You can just fill in an A4 form. It's not like in the UK to get a gender recognition cert. You have to have lived as the opposite sex for 2 years and have provable, like, that you have a diagnosis from a doctor or whatever. Nothing. There is no requirement for proof. It's just a self-declaration and €10 for a solicitor's signature. At the conference, I actually had provided the form to each attendee so they could go through it while we were discussing the Gender Recognition Act. But it's like, we have full self-ID. There's no legal recourse.
And what about in sports? What's going on with the... Because I think sports is obviously one of the things that people who aren't necessarily familiar with the debates, they can certainly, with their own eyes, see the physical differences.
So a couple of years ago, the Irish Women's Rugby Association, I can't remember the name of that particular association, but they said no men in women's sports. But there was the usual outcry. But there is a biological man playing against young women and teens in GAA, like our Gaelic football, and he has like a porn site and everything, but it's like total fetishist type, a straight man, and he actually, we have at the end of every year we do like a kind of jokey awards, but it is a protest as well against the gay and lesbian awards because they're completely captured, and they awarded him, who plays against actual, like, teenage girls in GAA, the Sports Person of the Year in the Gay and Lesbian Awards show, when we have incredible gay, lesbian and bisexual athletes, like Kelly Harrington is an Olympian, Jack Woolley is an Olympian, they're both gay and lesbian, and they weren't even nominated. It was all trans rights activists or trans-identified men.
So I think what's interesting about your group, Not All Gays, is, frankly, that you're young. Because the pushback that we saw in the UK, certainly with the LGBT Alliance, were elderly, mostly left-wing lesbians. They were the ones who started the pushback. But it's interesting to see within Ireland that it's young people. I mean, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 25, and our group, the eldest in our group is 35, so I'd be the youngest in the group. But we were all just so sick of having this ideology kind of pushed on us, because we didn't live in the age where gay rights was just acceptable. As soon as we kind of started realising our sexuality, it was gender ideology alongside it. So that was very confusing, especially for me as a teenager. I know it was confusing for Annig as well. So we really were just like, we didn't have anyone to look up to who was fighting back against us. We wanted to do that for younger people.
Yeah, and have you noticed a response from younger people as well, seeing that, having grown up within that movement? What percentage of people do you think are totally beholden to it?
So, like, we actually had a shared friend. She's a heterosexual woman, but she completely cut ties when we set up NAG. Even though we had like a turfy podcast for 2 years before that, it was very strange. But there's a lot of people who are completely captured. But when you sit down and talk to people quietly, they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, like, of course men can't be lesbians. Of course, but like, be kind."
Yeah.
You know, like, we'll still use
the two most dangerous words in the British language. Yeah, well, exactly, of course. So you had this conference, you set it up, people, you're in your 20s, mid-30s, and, I mean, that's a big deal to to organise. That's how many of you actually are in this group then?
There's 5 of us.
5 of you, and then you ordered this guy. And how many people attended over the? It was last weekend, right?
Yeah, we sold out 150 tickets, and I'd say about 80 to 100 showed up. It's hard to tell. We were all, rattled the whole day trying to.
Did you meet people for the first time? People you knew just online?
Yeah, there was actually a good handful of young people that showed up that, we were worried they had infiltrated to kind of, cause a bit of trouble. But no, they were completely, happy to see people fighting back against us. So that was brilliant. We didn't expect that at all. So it really it made a lot of it feel worth it, even though the media's ignoring us in Ireland. But just to see young people actually come, it was just great.
Well, is it because it fights against the narrative that, of course, the media out there are just going to be pushing? So I assume you're going to hopefully be doing more of this.
Yes, so we're going to make it an annual thing now that we know that we can do it with our very little funds ourselves, and we're able to manage to bring people from all over the world. We had Jamie Michelle from Gays Against Groomers in the States. She flew over with her wife. She was our keynote speaker. But we also had Bev Jackson, the founder of LGB Alliance. So we had women and men of all ages, all political backgrounds. They would have quite polarised in other aspects, but that we were all able to come together from across the political spectrum.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is not a left-right-wing issue. As much as people might try to pretend that this is something about far right, of course it's not. It's just whether you believe in reality or not. Do you think that... what kind of... Did you get a negative response from anybody?
Not really, no. It was the same again. We were ignored. Beforehand, the day before we set up all of our mics, and then when we got there the next morning, they were stolen and there was a dirty towel left on the ground. But other than that, things kind of went very smooth.
What does a dirty towel represent in trans ideology?
Oh, God, everything. Who knows?
Yeah.
God knows where they're sticking it,
Well, but within traditional gay spaces, do you think that more and more people are then becoming aware? I mean, do you think that the older gay people are also really know what's going on, but they're just afraid to speak out? Seeing younger people like yourselves doing that, do you think that will hopefully inspire them?
I think a lot of them seem to be pulling up the ladder behind them, including main kind of gay names that would be known in Irish media, like Panty Bliss, Rory O'Neill. He's particularly bad trans rights activist, very publicly. But then there's John Boyne, Boy in Striped Pyjamas, author, and he actually gave us a shout out today. So there are older gays that would have presence or popular, some sort of platform that are speaking up about it. It's few and far between, and again kind of ignored.
Well, you say that, but just from going through the last sort of decade, from what I've seen, and we've got some of the leading lights of gender critical movement here this evening. The thing that, and I think they would agree with me, that once the dam bursts, you say 10 years, it can pretty much fall apart overnight. Because I think, people aren't stupid. They know what's going on. They're just afraid. Yeah. And you see younger people like yourselves taking a stand. That's where bravery is going to come from, and that's how change happens. So thank you very much for what you're doing, and thank you very much for joining us here. Yes, Sean Atkinson, Vice President of Little Days, and Anne Kurdi, President. So, coming up on Free Speech Nation, is it time for a UK Free Speech Charter? Andrew Doyle, he joins us next. See you in a couple of minutes.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
High pressure is in charge for much of Europe over the next couple of days, bringing plenty of dry, warm and sunny weather. However, there will still be 1 or 2 showers around, particularly across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands, as we go through Monday afternoon. But elsewhere, high pressure in charge, bringing dry, sunny and some really warm weather over the next couple of days. We could see temperatures into the high 20s, perhaps even into the low 30s across parts of Spain, Portugal and across parts of Italy too. But plenty of sunshine is on the cards.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the week ahead is set to remain fairly changeable, but one thing what we'll all notice towards the end of the week is it turning increasingly warm and humid. So out there at the moment, we do have this area of high pressure trying to build in, and that will kill off most of the showers this evening, giving us fairly lengthy clear skies, especially across many eastern and central parts of the UK. Further west, we will continue to see some showers as the night goes on, but under the clear skies, it will turn fairly fresh for the time of year. Could also see some mist and fog patches forming, but most towns and cities, I think, holding up into double figures. So as we start Monday morning off across many southern parts of the UK, it's going to be a fairly cheery start to the day once any early mist and fog patches clear. Could just be the odd shower around, but I think for many southern parts of England and South Wales it should be fairly dry. Maybe an increased risk of showers for Northern England, and then a very different story for Northern Ireland and Scotland here. Increasing cloud through the course of the morning with some outbreaks of rain. Saying that, eastern Scotland, we will start the day with some sunshine, but make the most of it because the cloud and rain further west will spread its way towards you as we go through the course of the morning. And overall for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be a fairly cloudy and wet day that rain heavy at times, and will eventually move into parts of Northern England and the far north of Wales as we move into the afternoon. So it's really going to be the southern parts of the UK what hangs on to the fairly dry and bright weather, and you can see that in the temperatures too, rather cool in the north, but could see highs reaching 21 in the south. Overnight the rain will clear away, but it will leave behind a fair amount of cloud and some damp weather for southern England and South Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and eventually into Northern England too, a much better day with increasing amounts of sunshine here. That will set us up for a fairly dry and bright middle part of the week, but then it turns increasingly warm, humid and potentially thundery for some of us as we end the week ahead.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Andrew Doyle, comedian, former host of the show, has called for a UK free speech charter based on the US First Amendment. He urges the repeal of all hate speech laws and the introduction of clearer rules on incitement to violence. He's here. There he is, Andrew Doyle.
Hello, Josh.
How are you?
I'm very well. You're looking well.
You're looking well as well.
Thank you.
The compliments are out of the way.
Yes, yes.
So I was reading on your Twitter feed, X feed this week. What was the inciting incident that brought it up?
Well, I mean, the big thing this week has been the arrest of Hamit Koskan, the conviction of Hamit Koskan for burning his own book in a peaceful protest outside the Turkish consulate. It happened to be a copy of the Quran, but it shouldn't matter, because he should be able to dispose of his own property however he likes, particularly in the form of a peaceful protest. I mean, if he'd have burnt a copy of the Da Vinci Code, he wouldn't have gone to court, would he? And in fact, there would have been a good case to send him to do that, because it's a terrible book.
If only you'd been here an hour and a half.
Look, no, I don't like the idea of burning books generally. I think it's a bad image. I think it has too many messy and ugly historical connotations. But unlike the Nazis who stole all those books, raided libraries, tried to eliminate whole branches of thought, he was just disposing of his own book as a protest. The two things are not comparable, right? So the problem with that is this is one of those milestone moments where we seem to just ignore the connotations of this. I mean, if you think about it, that is a de facto blasphemy law. You know, when the Crown Prosecution Service originally pressed charges, they actually phrased it as such. They said he is being charged with intent to cause distress or alarm against the institution institution of Islam. It didn't even say against Muslims. It invented a law.
That Islam has feelings in and of itself.
Exactly. And no belief system should be ring-fenced from ridicule or mockery or criticism. And I think this is just one of those cases, like the Lucy Connolly case, like David Wootton, the guy who was found guilty in court for wearing an offensive Halloween costume. You know, all of these things, you have all these moments. 12,000 people a year arrested in the UK for offensive speech. At some point, we've got to say no. We need a complete overhaul of the system. We need to change the whole damn thing. Because we don't have a First Amendment. America has its First Amendment, so it has a kind of barrier in place in the Constitution. We don't have a written Constitution. Our Constitution is based on precedent.
So do you think the Founding Fathers, that they recognised that that was an issue within the UK and they were like, this is something that we need to fix ourselves?
Yeah, well, the Founding Fathers were looking at other systems around the world and trying to find the most watertight, the most foolproof system to protect the law. We don't have that. And part of the reason for that is that, you know, our Parliament is sovereign. It can't bind any future Parliaments. You can't make or unmake laws or say that a future Parliament can't make or unmake a law. So it's very difficult for us to have these protections. So that's why I'm saying a root and branch reform. No, I'm not a constitutional expert by any means or a lawyer. I just want to start a conversation. Why can't we have a discussion about maybe implementing some kind of equivalent to the US First Amendment, whether that's a free speech charter or some kind of Bill of Rights, something that enshrines our right, or every individual, every citizen's right, to speak freely, to cause offence, and not to be hauled up in court as a result. I think it's getting out of control. Actually, I think we actually have to... We need something as seismic as the Magna Carta. I mean, I was at Salisbury Cathedral just 2 days ago. I looked at the original Magna Carta. There's only four of the original copies left. The one in Salisbury is the most preserved. And there's something quite magical about looking at this thing that completely revolutionised... I mean, it was effectively a tax revolt. It was rich barons who didn't want to have to pay all this money to the king. But in that document, it enshrines this incredible idea of liberty. Every free man has freedom. You can't, the authorities can't just seize their property or arrest them or detain them. You know, it lays the groundwork for habeas corpus. It's really, we need something as seismic as that. And when I put out this idea of a free speech charter, a lot of lawyers got very angry and said, well, no, you can't bind no parliament can be bound in this way. It's like, well, if we have a written constitution, maybe they can. Maybe we do need a complete overhaul. And what I was suggesting was a few things we could do. I mean, firstly, like I say, a free speech charter that says no one can be arrested for expressing their view. The government has no right to be probing around at your private thoughts.
Which we know they've been doing.
Which they've been doing, absolutely. But also, let's do some other things. Let's repeal all hate speech laws, right? Hate is a human emotion that is hardwired through many thousands of years of evolutionary history. You can't just get rid of a negative human emotion through the statute books. You know, they're not going after wrath or envy or caprice, are they? But they're going after hate. You can't do it, right? So the best thing to do is to protect... Well, let's get rid of those. So those laws are bound up in the Malicious Communications Act of 1988, the Communications Act of 2003, the Public Order Act of 1986. Anything that refers to speech that is insulting or abusive or could...
You can't define those terms, that's the problem, right? What's an insult, what's abuse?
Well, the Section 127 of the Communications Act says that if you post something online that is grossly offensive, you can end up in prison. Grossly... What does that mean? I mean, I find it grossly offensive for the state to lock people up for what they say. So should the author of the Communications Act go to prison? Because it's such a subjective thing, right? So I think we repeal all of those hates. And I'm not saying, I have to be really clear about this, because people always misunderstand this. I'm not saying I like the fact that people say hateful things. I'm not saying I enjoy hearing hateful things. A lot of them are directed my way. I don't like that. You know, I'd love for that to go away. But we have to live in the real world where human beings are messy, they're complicated, they're emotional, they say horrible things. But the price that we all pay for our freedom is that some people in society are going to say some really ghastly things. But what's more important to us, and we have to look at it this way, not, you know, is it more important that we censor or criminalise what these few individuals who say really ghastly, horrible things, try and stir up all sorts of bile, or do we want to empower the state to criminalise the limits of thought and speech? Now, I say, you look at history, that's much more of a threat. OK, so I'd love it if people didn't say horrible things, but they will, because we're dealing with human beings. But let's not empower the state, give it all of that clout, because we know where that leads. So I would like to see hate speech laws repealed. I'd also like to see an end to this idea of protected characteristics, full stop. OK, so most of the, as we know, there's a thing called non-crime hate incidents. At the moment, the police will record your name if you've said something that someone has perceived to be offensive or motivated by hatred towards a protected characteristic, you know, whether that is a gender reassignment or a sexual orientation or race or whatever. I don't think that's necessary. If someone attacks me in the street, I don't care if they've done it because I'm gay or because they just dislike my tie, which would be a fair point. I would say, let's just apply the law, sentence them accordingly. It doesn't matter what their private...
Violence is violence.
Violence is violence, right? So you don't need hate crime law, you just need crime law, right? And I think getting rid of those protected characteristics would prevent people from weaponising the law against people because they say, I've perceived that this is a problem. And tied up within that is the idea that we need to reform quangos and governmental departments that have become ideologically captured with a view that censorship is the right way to go about things. Perfect example is the College of Policing. That's the quango that's in charge of the training of police in England and Wales. Now, they introduced in 2015 the idea of non-crime hate incidents. No government mandate for it. Two successive Home Secretaries told them to stop it. The High Court told them to stop it because it chills free speech. But because they are activist captured, they carry on. And that's why you end up with police raiding people's houses, commenting on their very Brexity books. You know, that's why you end up with people hauled over the coals. A guy went to prison for 8 weeks for an offensive meme, for goodness sake, right? Well, 3 offensive memes. But there was no possibility of incitement to violence in that case, but he still went to prison.
So the point of this having a charter is that we have an ideal. So we can lay it out and go, look, this is something that we're aiming towards.
Well, it's more than that. I think it's that we have enshrined in some way, some tangible way, our right to free speech. This is something that we're so flippant about now.
But do you think that there's any reality of that actually becoming...
Probably not. There's no appetite for it, right? Because no parliamentarians ever want to stand up and say, I support the right for horrible homophobes and racists to say their stuff, right? Because it looks like you are defending what they're saying, but you're not. You're defending a principle that is far more important. Sorry?
They're right to say it.
They're right to say it. Not that they are right to say it, but that they have a right to say it.
That should be your motto.
It's really important that we get that right. And so, therefore, we need something, some sort... At least let's have a discussion. Because I think... there is evidence that the Crown Prosecution Service has an ideological basis. There's evidence that certainly the College of Policing should be scrapped because it is completely captured. There's now evidence that the judiciary itself...
Two-tiered.
So we need some sort of protection against ideology within all of these institutions. Otherwise, it's going to keep on happening. The other thing we need to do is really fix into law what incitement to violence means. OK? At the moment, we have people like Lucy Connolly in prison for 31 months, when someone who actually committed violence only got 28. We need something that says, no, we need something like the US Brandenburg test for incitement to violence that says that incitement was likely to happen, that it was intended to happen, and that the threat was imminent. Until we have all these protections in place, we don't live in a free country, frankly.
Yeah, well, look at that. There he is, you know. You sure know a lot about all of this stuff. Andrew, next week,
yes,
you're going to come back and host.
Yeah, why not?
You should come and share it. Come and share some of that insight.
Why not? I'll be a bit more lighter. No, I was just conscious that I had a small amount of time, you know?
No, not at all. Laid it out there, that's going to be clipped up, and that will start a revolution, and that's how...
Well, let's hope. Yeah, Magna Carta Part 2.
Magna Carta, yeah, but they'll be looking at the video, and they'll have the digital go, if I only hadn't worn that tie.
Yeah, fair enough, absolutely.
Well, see you next week. I won't be here. I'll be watching from home. But next on Free Speech Nation, it's that time of week, my panel will be looking at what went viral this week on social sensation. See you in a couple of minutes, and see Andrew next week.
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
To try and get rid of the St George's flag.
Well, firstly, I think a woke landing craft drove through our interview at 10 miles an hour. But answering your question, I was asked to change a whole bunch of things on that spring picture. And to this day, I don't know why. As I said previously, it was just selling very, very well. And all of a sudden, the skids hit, and I was told to remove several things for God knows why. You know, it's been selling very well, so why would you want to change it? And to this day, I don't understand. Well, as the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So, Mike, we see there the St George's flag. Let's get the next picture up. There's a saucy window cleaner halfway up the ladder there, peeking into a soap-covered, buxom young beauty. Presumably that's also anti-woke these days.
Well, I have to enjoy myself when I'm drawing something. I'll sit there drawing blokes all day.
So the person in the bath you made trans, fair enough. If you can't beat them, join them. And what about the Morris dancers?
Well,
they didn't even like Morris dancers, mate.
Yeah, the other thing is you've got to remember I live in Bognor Regis, so we're used to innuendo and lunacy.
So the fact of the matter is they censored your Jigsaw, you told them to go and shove it. Do you think this is, you got a quick 30 seconds, any regrets on what you did?
No, not at all. I'm English, I'm very proud of my country. I don't care what anyone does. I don't want to join their club, but they're quite happy to do it. But I don't understand a professional suicide that company seemed to do by upsetting all the regulars that love doing my humour.
GB News. GB News.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back for the last time to Free Speech Nation. We've got an audience question now from Jan.
Is it a crime to communicate with your local MP via a sticker?
So this is something that happened to you, right?
Yes, I put 2 stickers on my local MP's poster which invited communication and had the police round.
Wow.
Saying that somebody might be offended. They didn't say anybody had been.
OK, just the fact that they might be. And what is that all it said on the sticker?
It said misogyny present, because I was critiquing the Labour Party's policy of not knowing what a woman is, even after the Supreme Court decision back in April.
Wow.
It said misogyny present, WTF, what the flip. No one cares, you know.
Yeah. And how did they find you? They CCTV?
That's it. They said it was caught on CCTV.
Yeah.
And I said, how did you know it was me?
Were you wearing that shirt?
No. And they've magically got my address wrong in the same way as another organisation gets my address wrong. So they've been talking to each other.
Well, that relates exactly to what Andrew was just talking about.
I was very, follows straight on, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, look, we've got one final sensation. Thank you very much for that question. And let's have a little look at it. Leo, forget free speech. This is what's really important. It's getting a sunbed, isn't it?
I just love that song.
Yeah.
That was a great song. I wanted to chase Benny Hill round the audience with that song.
It's like being back in the 80s.
Yeah. So this is, I take it this is Germans. I mean, we can't hear what they're saying, but, you know, there's
Germans and I'm assuming English
Germans
people as well.
Going down and putting their towels in the sun lounger before breakfast so they can, you know, Bagsy the sun lounger. And we did not defeat them in 2 world wars for them to do that. All the cotton should be removed from Germany as reparation.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when the Michelin Guide was called racist and the Darlington nurses finally won their case. Thank you very much to my panel, Leo Kearse and Paul Cox, and to all my brilliant guests this evening, and, of course, to my audience. Thank you, guys, for joining us. Video tonight is next, and headliners after that. See you later. Take care.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Well, the week ahead is set to remain fairly changeable, but one thing what we'll all notice towards the end of the week is it turning increasingly warm and humid. So out there at the moment we do have this area of high pressure trying to build in, and that will kill off most of the showers this evening, giving us fairly lengthy clear skies, especially across many eastern and central parts of the UK. Further west we will continue to see some showers as the night goes on, but under the clear skies it will turn fairly fresh for the time of year. Could also see some mist and fog patches forming, but most towns and cities I think holding up into double figures. So as we start Monday morning off across many southern parts of the UK, it's going to be a fairly cheery start to the day once any early mist and fog patches clear. It could just be the odd shower around, but I think for many southern parts of England and South Wales it should be fairly dry. Maybe an increased risk of showers for northern England, and then a very different story for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Here, increasing cloud through the course of the morning with some outbreaks of rain. Saying that, eastern Scotland, we will start the day with some sunshine, but make the most of it because the cloud and rain further west will spread its way towards you as we go through the course of the morning. And overall for Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is going to be a fairly cloudy and wet day that rain heavy at times, and will eventually move into parts of northern England and the far north of Wales as we move into the afternoon. So it's really going to be the southern parts of the UK what hangs on to the fairly dry and bright weather, and you can see that in the temperatures too, rather cool in the north, but could see highs reaching 21 in the south. Overnight the rain will clear away, but it will leave behind a fair amount of cloud and some damp weather for southern England and South Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and eventually into northern England too, a much better day with